Okay, Mr. Arcomando,
Present.
Ms. Borelli, Ms. Ainello,
Present.
Mr. Laurentino,
Present.
Ms. Mahoney,
Here.
Mr. Shear,
Here.
Ms. Torbic,
Present.
Ms. Traverso,
Here.
Ms. Ottarelli.
Here.
Please stand for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Adequate notice of this meeting has been sent to all members of the Board of Education and the Bergen Record in accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, 1975. At this time, Mr. Karate, I'll leave it up to you.
Sure. This evening, we have Mr. Paul Lurch from Lurch, Vinci, and Higgins to give a summation of our annual comprehensive financial report for the 2020-2021 school year. Mr. Lurch? Maybe not.
I see it when I see some of my uncles.
No.
Thanks, Ray. So I'm here to present the results of our latest audit, which ended June of 21. We're certainly approaching June of 22 rapidly. Part of the reason as to why we're delayed again has to do with, I guess I could still use the excuse of COVID, right? But apparently what's happened is that we are now in year 4 of implementing a governmental auditing standard, and that's standard number 75, and it's other than post-retirement, so it's the health benefit component. We've been delayed pretty much every single year since we started implementing this, and this is because what's happening is that the state of New Jersey is contracted with an outside accounting firm to prepare the calculations, and it's been later and later each year. This year, the statutory deadline for the audit was December 5th. It did get pushed back by the Department of Education to February 5th, and I think everybody realized at that point a lot of it had to do with COVID and those issues. But the financial data that we rely upon wasn't delivered until the end of February, and then they basically give you 45 days. So we went from a December 5th deadline all the way to a March 15th deadline. So sooner or later, we're going to get back into a normal cycle. And maybe it might actually be next year. So we're here anyway to talk about the results of the audit. 3 opinions the board received in their audit report. All of those opinions are unmodified, clean opinions. So we have an opinion on the financial statements, opinion on the single audit and the internal controls and the compliance with governmental auditing standards. And then we also have an opinion on our single audit, which is referring to our major programs and that the district received. And I'll talk a little bit about that. There were no deficiencies noted in the audit. I think that's important for each board member to realize that that is certainly something that is not taken or shouldn't be taken lightly. Very hard to achieve that. If we had deficiencies in the audit report, and if those deficiencies rose to the levels of compliance issues, material, significant, internal controls, those would have all been reported in the opinions that I spoke about. So all the opinions that you have in front of you, if you read them, they're all going to be clean. There are going to be no disclaimers, no issues of noncompliance, of internal controls, material, or insignificant. So that's key, and it's not easy to do. And I think that for those board members that have been around and know Ray, certainly, he has the expertise and it shows. And I think, his whole staff is obviously doing an excellent job. Not easy to do. Okay. So you were subject to a state and federal single audit. The trigger point there is that if you expend more than $750,000 in either state or federal, it triggers what we call a single audit, and really doesn't mean one audit. It means that what we have to do then is we have to look at the major compliance or the major grants that are identified. we go to the compliance supplement and we do specific testing, more in depth than we normally do for those specific grants to determine whether or not the eligibility, allowable expenditures, those type of items. So just a little bit of a reference, the Saddlebrook Board of Education expended $8.1 million in state subsidies or state grants. We did pick the categorical state aid and also FICA as the two programs that we tested. On the federal side, you expended $1.4 million. And here we took a look at the National School Lunch Program. And again, in diving into those specific grants, those compliance, we found nothing that needed to be reported to the Board of Education. So what is new for this year? New for this year, two things were really new. One is that we are now in the initial implementation of GASB number 84, fiduciary funds. So if you looked at your audit report last year, fiduciary funds were reported, which included scholarships, unemployment, student activities, those type of items, payroll. Those are all been put into a different fund. So the fiduciary funds, for all intents and purposes, has been eliminated. So we have some restatement footnotes in here as well. But really what happened is that the student activities and the scholarships now in special revenue fund, and unemployment and payroll activities now in your general operating fund. So we did have a restatement footnote because when we look at the financial statements, you'll see that now there's a new reservation of equity for unemployment that didn't exist in the years before. So that is new for this year. We talked a little bit about GASB 75 for the pensions. We're in our fourth year there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about fund equity and fund balance. One, I'm just going to start off by looking at food service. So food service was active for Saddlebrook Board of Education for the past year. Due to COVID and all the additional federal funding, the entire program was funded through state and federal proceeds. Net position was up $54,000 to an ending equity number of $144,000. So we had a positive year there as well. And then community school, obviously, there was no activity for our year under audit. There was a net position that did remain at the end of $342,000. And we all understand that that money is being utilized for additional improvements into the school system. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about fund equity. And if the board member has the report, by all means, I'm going to be looking at page 75. Otherwise, if you have the synopsis, it's also should be there on the last page as well. So Exhibit C1 is really the general fund budgetary comparison schedule. So that's your statement of operations. And it shows your budgeted revenues, your budgeted expenditures, and it shows the actual for each component, gives you a variance, and it also obviously accumulates from the beginning to the end of the year. Saddlebrook experienced what most school districts did in 2021. They had an uptick in their fund equity, which was great. I mean, especially, knowing the history of Saddlebrook Board of Education and the struggle always with the funding and trying to get programs going. This particular year, fund equity was up over $2.5 million. And really what's happening across the state of New Jersey is that because of COVID, so now you limited the amount of some of the expenditures. You didn't have as much in transportation, maybe substitutes, those type of things where the expenditures were reduced. Also, we had a tremendous influx of federal monies. And we all know we have the ESSER money, the COVID money, all of that money has been coming into the districts as well as the municipalities in the state. So the combination of all of that actually produced an excess of $2.5 million, which is terrific. So when I look at the fund equity balance here, and we'll talk a little bit about this here, is that the fund equity went up, and I'm going to do it in total first. It went up from 1.6 million to 4.2 million. One other thing, as we go through this progression, and I'm going to talk about the unassigned fund balance. So the unassigned fund balance, there was an ability for the Board of Education to take that unassigned fund balance from 2% up to 4%. And I think the legislature, when they first, enacted this piece of law, I think they were concerned, everybody was concerned with COVID, that there was going to be the adverse relationship. In other words, we were going to have less money than in actuality of what we had, where everybody was producing more in equity. So they were trying to give cushions for the unknown. Your Board of Education continued to keep it at the 2%. So that 2% number is roughly $950,000. This particular year, it's $959,000. And really what that is, it's a calculation where you take your total expenditures, and of course there's modifications to everything and adjustments to it, but it's basically your modified expenditures at 2%. That gets you to the $859,000. So you were able to go to 4. We stayed at the $850,000. Simply, what does that mean? That means when we go through the progression of some of the other restricted equities, anything in excess that we don't put into a specific location would have to go into excess surplus. The way that the resolution was worded, and it's all done by design in June, and the board goes through the process of approving that resolution, that's where the flow of funds gets dictated. So if you go back to your June resolution, you'll see that Raymond talked about the 2% and where the money was going to go. It can go into capital reserve. It can go into maintenance reserve. It can go into, there's even an emergency reserve. So those are the options. So the max was 849. Then I'm just going to work up this particular analysis here. We have reserve for encumbrances of $649,000. Simply means goods and services that were ordered but not delivered. An example I always use is the example with us. So you contracted with Lurch, Vinci, and Higgins to do the audit, but of course we're not going to do the work until after the year end. So it's a reservation of equity. So when that contract gets awarded, it's encumbered, stays on the books as encumbered. When we go through the process the next year, that encumbrance rolls into the budget, and when we perform the services, it gets paid out of the subsequent year. But it's encumbered in the year that the contract was awarded. Then we come up and we go into restricted fund balances. So unemployment, as I said to you before, that's new this year. So there's $411,000 set aside for potential unemployment claims. One of the other nuances with COVID and all this additional federal funding is that Board of Educations have not been billed for over, I guess it's coming up on 2 years now, for any unemployment claims. I don't know if that's ever going to happen or not. We're all kind of assuming that with all this excess federal money that the state will use that to pay any kind of unemployment claims and not have to go back and charge the Board of Educations at that point. So it simply means that we're sitting with $411,000 for future claims. Last year at balance, we restated it for roughly $79,000. Maintenance reserve. Maintenance reserve is a reserve that's established to maintain the facilities. So in that resolution that you did in June, there was an ability to transfer any excess monies, if there were, into the maintenance reserve, then capital reserve. So the Board of Education transferred $500,000 of excess earnings from 21 into the maintenance reserve. So we went from $39,000 to $500 now, and $39,000. Simply gets used through the budget cycle. The last item here is going to be the capital reserves. Capital reserves obviously are for future capital needs, facility needs, improvements to the district. And here's where the bulk of the money really went. So last year, the total fund balance or the total balance in capital reserve was $447,000. This year, you're at $1.7 million, although you're using $162,000, which is the piece that's designated. So that's terrific. I think that's exactly what you should be doing. Hopefully you have another good year when you get through 2022, and you'll have the ability then to fund either maintenance or do additional capital reserve monies. And it gives you the ability to improve the facilities on an annual basis. So you're not so reliant on major contracts and major approvals by the voters. And then we just have a very small piece, which is legally restricted. This was from an old proposal that was passed that remains unspent. Raymond just needs to go through and cancel that or spend that piece on education. So There are no comments in the report, so I have nothing else that I can go through and kind of tell you as far as recommendations. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments, but by all means. No?
I'd like to thank you again for being so thorough. You know, it's just, some of it was like Chinese to me, but
Well,
you did it.
Everyone's glossing. Like, oh.
But thank you. It's
All right, thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thanks, Mr. Lurch. Their audit is very thorough, too. And Mrs. Violetti thought my position wasn't that exciting. Isn't that exciting? I just want to thank,
I did read through the entire booklet and I Googled fiduciary. So we spoke about fiduciary. I learned.
I just wanted to thank all the departments. I mean, there's a lot of things that they review here from, food service, transportation, all the purchase orders, payroll. It's a lot, and I thank all the ladies in my office and all the departments. They do a fine job, and every couple of years I do get an audit with no comments. It's hard to do. There are little things to fix, but it's nice to get one that's clean once in a while.
Yes, thank you. Okay, superintendent's report today, or,
No.
okay, Ray, any administrative report?
I emailed everybody about the budget and how we were able to reduce the Chapter 44 amount that was deducted from tax levy. So that was a good thing. We're able to add a few more positions in the budget, which we sent off to the county office today for their review, hoping to get that back, advertise in the newspaper, and have our presentation, public hearing on May 9th at our caucus meeting. And that's when we'll go through the details of the budget, Mrs. Violetti and I.
Thank you. Okay, am I opening or? Here. Okay, board action items, B2122.37 to .38. Any discussion? Karate. Oh, no. Okay. Okay. Shall I let Vicky do that one, or let's just go through it all? Vic, you want to do that one?
Yep.
Please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so E2122.55 to E2122.61. Any question? I actually have a question. It's ironic, but no, go ahead. I just had a quick question about field trips, and this could be that it's always like this, and I just the senior banquet's on there as a field trip. Do we have to do that just because we're having an event?
We supply transportation.
We're supplying transportation. We've always.
No? Do we
Okay, thank you. So it is something new. Good. That makes me feel better.
No,
that
I'm not sure.
I'm not cracking up.
I'm not sure.
I don't remember there ever being transportation for senior banquet. I know I drove my kid and picked her up. So. That's why it's on, because we're supplying transportation.
Any trips that the students are going outside the district.
Right. It's in the evening, so that's why.
Is that the
It
one that
doesn't
already
matter.
occurred?
We have.
That's why I'm
Yeah.
asking.
It already occurred, that one?
Yeah.
We did provide, did we provide transport? I don't recall.
It was at the,
We have a senior mom on the
I didn't see
board.
buses there.
But did we supply some transportation is what being asked.
There was a bus that was available. I
Right.
don't know if
That's cool.
kids took them up on it or not, but just because they wanted them to be driven by a parent, not drive themselves, so
Right.
they were offering a bus.
We did, I
forget-
know we offered the bus. I was there and I don't recall seeing the
I don't
bus,
know if
but
the bus
I know
went.
it was offered.
Are they allowed to drive themselves?
I don't think they
I don't
were.
know.
I'm not sure.
The prom,
Parents
yeah.
drop off, I
Prom,
know.
yes, but not senior banquet. Okay,
I
thank
also
you.
have a question on this subject. If we do supply transportation and it's a school function, do they have to take that transportation or can half take it and then the other half go on their own?
I think it depends on what the function is. A field trip they have to take, our transportation is during the
Bless you.
school day. I believe with something like this, it was offered in order to, I think it was an attempt to get more students to attend. So I think it depends on the function.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, through the chair, for tomorrow's teacher. So I'm a little confused in the back. I understand the concept of it, but then in the back, in the proposal, it says that the teacher, there's a stipend, and then there's a cost for her to be trained. So I'm like a little confused of where the stipend's coming from.
Where do you see the stipend?
In the proposal.
Yeah, it's in the proposal.
I'm in it, I'm looking.
Since Ms. Lawrence is projected to teach at the high school graduation requirement, she will likely teach this course as a sixth period stipend position.
That is with the current contract, a high school teacher that teaches a sixth period,
Okay, so she's gonna be
Receives
teaching
the-
an extra period.
correct?
Okay. And will that be going forward always? Will we,
It would be dependent upon the schedule.
okay, so this particular upcoming year, it's only,
They're saying most likely based on the projections,
okay,
but it's not finalized yet.
okay. And then, and we're paying for her to be trained
Yes,
so that she can be a dual, like a dual
it's a
certified?
dual enrollment course.
And how much does that cost?
It's on the agenda, I think, tonight. It's on tonight's
Oh,
agenda.
500?
Right? That's the curriculum writing.
Yeah.
I believe it's on the professional development workshop list. Let me see.
Just like in the workshop.
Workshops, there it is. Let me see.
It is the workshop.
$520.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Shear.
Through the chair, on F212295, there's no cost to us to put these cameras in. Is there going to be a cost to us to have someone tape this or whatever?
No, it's done automatically.
And where's it going to be aired?
It's a service that anybody interested would sign up for a subscription, and then you have access to not only Saddlebrook games, but any other games that are through this company.
Okay.
And I believe there's one going to be on the football field and one in the gym, right?
Yes, that's the two that'll be free. I mean, if it works out, we can look down the road, but to put it at our other fields, but there's a cost involved with that and where the camera's located.
Through the chair, my question, when reading through the proposal, it's our responsibility to get, what's the right word? Permission is the word that's coming to my brain, and that's not right. Because the kids are going to be taped. How are we, is that just going to be through the general that we do at the beginning of the year, or how are we controlling that?
It is permission.
It's a
I think it's a slip in the beginning of the year for the approval to be on the TV and all that.
So if a kid on the team, parents say, no, we can't take that game, is that how we're gonna handle that?
Probably be blacked out, right? Or faded out.
Yeah, I guess they won't.
Just before we go through with like, I was just asking, because that could become a major issue if we have a child who's on a team and their parents do not agree that they can be taped. How do we handle that situation?
My thought would be it's run through the athletic department. And then if that does occur, we would need to work with the company and figure out a solution.
One of the options, one of the clauses that I liked in the contract was that you have the right to ask that a game be taken down
Right.
and not be posted. So if you had an individual situation that presented a problem, you can address that by just saying this game will not be broadcast. You know,
Okay,
It's tough.
thank you.
Thank you.
I have, let's see, it's the 101, we're trying to get a revised quote. If I have it by Wednesday, we'll put it on the agenda. If not, I have to pull it off. This is to enclose the new playground area at Washington School.
Would that be installed prior to the playground?
Yes.
Okay, Mr., is that it? Okay, Mr. Laurentino? Any question?
I'm just going to say on P5511, I'm still voting no. I'm against uniforms, and I just hope we've spent so much time on this that it's enforced.
Okay. Ms. Zattarelli?
Negotiations, we had a couple of meetings, and that's pretty much it
All right.
that I can report.
And would personnel be foreclosed or?
No, we can,
Okay,
general
Ms.
questions.
Traverso?
And before you get to that one, the negotiations to that doctrine one, we've done this before here because of the board member conflicts and voting on matters. We have to pass this doctrine of necessity, post it for 30 days, and then we can meet with the
I didn't see
association.
that, Ray, sorry.
That's all right.
Ms. Traverso? We got two.
With regards to P2122.73 through P2122.81, are there any questions or discussion?
Yes, through the chair. On P2122.75, number 1, the bus driver custodian. Did we have any in-house applicants?
Yes.
And we went out? Obviously.
Yes.
Am I allowed to ask why?
Yes.
We just felt this was the best candidate for the position.
No, this was the one, what were the hours? Was that about that?
10, we're going to have a 10 to 6 shift.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, any other? Go ahead, Ms. Torp.
I'm curious as to why there are more, why there are more musicians on here from the play. I thought we covered all that.
I do know that there was somebody that canceled the night of, so I'm sure it's that revision.
The violin.
It's 3 violins, yeah.
When it says pending appropriate paperwork, what would that be? Uh-uh.
Well, it's over now. We probably could change that. They should have had it all in.
What happened already?
You're absolutely right, but just out of curiosity, what is appropriate paperwork? Because I've asked in the past if these people have background checks, and I was told some of our kids, they have no access to the children, which is a lie, but that's beside the point.
Not that they didn't have access, they were not alone with the children.
Okay.
Through the chair, but isn't this, like, are we approving all 3 of these violins, or are we just approving a revision on the 400 for the one guy to be 300?
No, the first 2, I think, were not on previous lists.
Oh, okay,
They were either changes or added, and then the third one was to change the dollar
Revision.
amount.
got it, okay.
I still want to know what the paperwork is. That's my big argument, Vicki. What if we wanted to vote no? Seriously, what happens? It already happened.
I would assume that we have a budget for the musical and all of these people, so it's based on that, so it's covered.
They have their own budget.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so whatever is, it's been allotted for it, so they're within their means
Correct.
of the allotted, okay.
Okay.
Do we know what the paperwork is?
I would have to check into that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Committee reports today or Wednesday for everybody? Wednesday good?
I'll have them Wednesday.
Okay,
I have one for today
okay,
and Wednesday.
all right.
Okay, so, the middle school, high school PTO met in March, I believe, and they met tonight. So I'm gonna give the last meeting's report today, and then their meeting from April on Wednesday. All right, so they, wanted, me to mention that there was only 12 eligible seniors who applied for the scholarship. And, I'm sorry, there was only 12 eligible seniors and only 5 applied. So they were kind of disappointed that more of the eligible seniors did not apply. They mentioned that the counselor department, guidance department did a great job announcing it, but for some reason the students did not apply. They're hoping to have more students next year the families participate and apply. They've begun the process to review the applications. Also, they donated 215 ceramic pots for the last SEL day. And they heard that the kids had a lot of fun decorating them.
That was a
So,
big hit.
good. So they were very excited to be able to donate. They also are planning to do meals for the field day. And they're very excited that it's going to be a more normal field day than in the past years. And they're very excited about planning for Teacher Appreciation Week, which they are really dubbing as Staff Appreciation Week, because everyone, they want to honor and like support everyone. 2 big, huge donations, one from Spruce Tech and another one from a salon owner from Moxie Salon in Ridgewood that were quite generous. So thank you to those 2 individuals for their donation. They have lots of prizes to give out for the week. And they, when is it? May 2nd through the 5th, I believe. Hold on. That's in my notes for May 2nd through the 6th is Teachers Appreciation Week. Okay, so that's from the last meeting.
And also, I just needed a moment to check our notes. Those 3 violinists, 2 of them were last-minute substitutes, and one of them could not make one of the performances last minute, so that's why there was a deduction in his rate. And as far as the paperwork, for this year, it was the vaccine paperwork. We do require proof of a negative vaccination, COVID vaccination, and if not, then they had to provide proof of a testing result.
Thank you.
No fingerprinting.
Okay, anybody else with a committee? Liaison? That's nice. Okay, correspondence, old business, huh? New business? Okay, open a meeting to the public.
Hello, public.
At least we have public.
It's all good, okay. Close the meeting to the public. And now we will go into,
If I may,
sure.
Mr. Accomundo, I just also forgot to mention, we spoke about tomorrow's teachers, the aviation program. I just wanted to share that Mrs. DeBonis, our director of curriculum, set up a meeting with Mr. Meisch and the teacher that's going to lead that course and myself, and we went to a high school to watch that has this aviation program so we can witness it. The students were very eager and excited to share all their projects that they were completing, and we got to see the flight simulators. So
Nice.
it was very neat. So we're on track for that.
Oh, and for Sylvia, I don't know if you saw the emails today. They opened up the,
Ask Ray if I saw it.
oh, the school board's down at AC. Okay.
That opens up the bidding.
I'd like to adjourn the meeting to closed session for personnel and HIP. Where am I here?
Do we need a motion? Motion.
Okay, could I get a motion for closed session?
Motion.
Favor? Okay, thank you. Thank you, ladies. Oh, where am I? Whereas the Board of Education must discuss matters that are not appropriate to discuss in public, in a public meeting. And whereas these subjects are within the exceptions of the Open Public Meetings Act and are permitted to be discussed in closed session pursuant NJSA 10-4-12B. And whereas the Board of Education intends to discuss matters as follows. HIB case. I don't have to give all that number, right? Do we? No. Okay. And whereas the length of the closed session is estimated to be approximately 15 minutes, after which the public meeting of the board shall reconvene and action will not be taken. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Education will recess into closed session for only the aforesaid subject. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education hereby declares that it is discussed, that its discussion of the aforesaid subject will be made public at a time when the public's interest is in disclosure is greater than any privacy or governmental interest being protected from disclosure in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Okay, I'd like to adjourn to closed session. Thank you, ladies.